The diplomatic chamber filled with the soft hum of translation devices as Earth's first official contact with the Galactic Council began. Ambassador Davis sat quietly at the plain metal table, watching as dozens of alien species whispered among themselves. Their voices carried notes of amusement and dismissal that needed no translation. Rex, the tall reptilian representative from Altair, flicked his forked tongue in what his species considered laughter. "So this is humanity?" he said to his colleague. "Look at their primitive clothing. Synthetic fibers instead of energy-woven materials." The council chamber itself dwarfed anything humans had ever built. Floating platforms supported beings of impossible shapes, some made of living crystal, others appearing as shifting clouds of gas. Their technology hummed with power that made Earth's greatest achievements seem like stone tools. Dr. Mora, the council's chief xenobiologist, reviewed her notes on humanity while the meeting proceeded. Her species had evolved from aquatic creatures, and her gills fluttered with what passed for a sigh. "Carbon-based, oxygen-breathing, single-form biology," she muttered. "No natural weapons, no armor plating, no toxic secretions. How did they even survive their own evolution?" Davis presented humanity's case for peaceful membership in galactic society. He spoke of Earth's desire to learn, to trade, and to contribute to the greater community of species. His words were met with polite nods and barely hidden smirks. "Your ships," interrupted Warlord Pike, a massive creature covered in natural armor plates. "They still use chemical propulsion, yes? Fusion drives at best?" "We have various propulsion methods," Davis replied carefully. "Various methods," Pike repeated, his voice booming with laughter. "Child, my personal yacht could destroy your entire space fleet without charging its main. Weapons." The other council members joined in the laughter. They had seen humanity's clumsy first attempts at interstellar travel. Crude rockets that took months to reach nearby planets. Simple radio transmissions that leaked into space like a child's babbling. It was almost endearing how these primitive creatures thought they belonged among the stars. What they didn't know was that every word, every gesture, every technical specification mentioned in that chamber was being recorded by devices far more advanced than anything the council possessed. Hidden throughout the room, quantum sensors the size of dust particles transmitted data across dimensional barriers to receivers that existed outside normal space-time. Light years away, in a facility buried deep beneath the Sahara Desert, Admiral Stone reviewed the incoming intelligence. His weathered face showed no emotion as he watched the aliens mock humanity's supposed limitations. Around him, screens displayed real-time feeds from across the galaxy, not the primitive radio telescopes the aliens expected humans to use, but quantum-entangled observation networks that could peer into the heart of distant suns. "Classification complete," announced Dr. Maya, the facility's chief analyst. "They've categorized us as Class 3 sentients, technologically limited, militarily negligible." Stone nodded slowly. "Good. Maintain the deception." The truth was that humanity had been watching the galaxy for over 60 years. Their first breakthrough came in 1963, when a supposed meteor crash in Siberia had actually been a derelict alien probe. Within decades, human scientists had reverse-engineered technology that made galactic civilization look antiquated. But they had learned from observing other species' fates. Every civilization that had revealed advanced capabilities too early had been either enslaved or destroyed by their neighbors. The galaxy, for all its talk of enlightenment and cooperation, operated on the same brutal principles as Earth's ancient empires. Power was feared, and fear led to violence. Back in the council chamber, the session was concluding with humanity's assignment to a protective quarantine zone. The Galactic Council, in their infinite wisdom, would shield primitive Earth from the dangers of advanced civilization until humanity could properly evolve. "Your species will remain within your solar system," Rex announced formally. "This is For your own protection, of course. The galaxy can be dangerous for those unprepared for its complexities. Davis accepted the quarantine with appropriate humility. He even managed to look grateful for their protection. Inside, he knew this was exactly what Earth's leadership had expected. The quarantine would give humanity time to prepare for what was coming. As the alien delegates filed out of the chamber, their conversations turned to other matters. To them, humanity was just another primitive species that would either evolve properly over the next few millennia or extinction would take its natural course. Either way, they were not a concern. Dr. Mora filed her official report that evening. Species exhibits typical Class 3 characteristics, she wrote. Limited tool use, basic social structures, no evidence of exotic physics manipulation. Recommend standard observation protocols with minimal intervention. She marked the file as low priority and moved on to more interesting subjects. There were rumors of a new species discovered near the galactic rim that could manipulate gravity with their minds. Now that was worth studying. On Earth, President Cross received Admiral Stone's briefing in the White House Situation Room. The room looked like any other government office. Leather chairs, wooden table, paper documents scattered about. Nothing suggested that beneath their feet lay computational systems that could simulate entire universes. They bought it completely, Stone reported. Full quarantine implemented. We have maybe 5 years before someone decides we're worth conquering. Cross leaned back in his chair. 5 years to decide how much we reveal when the time comes. Through the Situation Room windows, Washington, D.C. looked peaceful in the evening light. Traffic moved along normal patterns. People went about their daily lives, completely unaware that their species had just been imprisoned within their own solar system by beings who saw them as barely evolved animals. But in facilities hidden across the globe, humanity's greatest minds worked on projects that would have terrified the Galactic Council's most advanced species. Reality manipulation engines that could rewrite the laws of physics, dimensional phase technology that made matter permeable at will, weapons that could ignite stars or create black holes with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. The galaxy saw Earth as harmless, a quiet backwater populated by primitive creatures playing with chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. They had made the classic mistake of judging a species by its public face rather than its hidden capabilities. Soon enough, they would learn just how wrong they were. But by then, it would be far too late to change their minds about humanity's true nature. The war room aboard the Corvani flagship Dominator pulsed with red battle lights as General Voss reviewed his invasion plans. 200 of the Empire's finest warships hung in formation just outside the Sol system, their weapons charged and ready. Each vessel stretched over a kilometer in length, bristling with plasma cannons and particle beam arrays that could melt continents. This will be the easiest conquest in Imperial history, Voss declared to his assembled officers. His 4 arms gestured at the holographic display showing Earth's pathetic defenses. Look at them. A few dozen orbital platforms with kinetic weapons, some primitive interceptor craft that can barely reach light speed. The Corvani had built their empire on the bones of lesser species. Their natural aggression, combined with superior technology, had crushed resistance across dozens of star systems. They viewed the Galactic Council's quarantine around Earth not as protection for humanity, but as a barrier keeping them from easy prey. Intelligence reports confirmed their limitations, added Colonel Nash, Voss's second-in-command. No energy shields, no exotic matter weapons, no dimensional technology. They're still using chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Voss's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The Corvani homeworld was running low on rare minerals needed for their war machine. Earth's untapped resources would fuel their next expansion campaign against the Centauri Dominion. Better yet, humans would make excellent slave labor. Their small size and apparent docility made them perfect for mining operations. Begin the attack, Voss commanded. Full advance. I want this over before their primitive distress signals can even reach the nearest council outpost. The Corvani fleet surged forward, their massive engines creating tears in space-time itself. Their sensors showed exactly what they expected. A handful of human ships moving to intercept them with laughably slow acceleration curves. Earth's defense satellites powered up their crude weapons, preparing for a battle they couldn't possibly win. What the Corvani couldn't see was the single human vessel already among them. The stealth destroyer Phantom had been waiting in dimensional phase for 3 hours, its exotic matter hull existing in a quantum state that made it undetectable by any known sensor technology. Captain Mills watched the alien fleet pass through his position without the slightest awareness of his presence. "Target the flagship," Mills ordered quietly. "Singularity charge, minimum yield." His weapons officer, Lieutenant Ross, hesitated for just a moment. "Sir, minimum yield will still create a gravitational anomaly visible from 3 systems away." "Orders are to make a statement," Mills replied. "Execute." The Phantom shifted from dimensional phase to normal space directly inside the Corvani. Flagship's bridge. For a split second, General Voss stared in confusion at the sleek human vessel that had materialized in the center of his command deck. His 4 arms reached for weapons that would never fire. The singularity bomb detonated with surgical precision. Instead of the massive explosion the Corvani expected from human weapons, reality simply twisted into an impossible knot. The flagship's entire forward section folded in on itself, compressed into a sphere no larger than a basketball before winking out of existence entirely. The rest of the Corvani fleet reacted with trained efficiency, turning their weapons on the mysterious human ship. Plasma bolts and particle beams filled the space where the Phantom had been, only to pass harmlessly through empty vacuum. Miles away, the destroyer had already phase-shifted to its next target. This time, Captain Mills decided on a different demonstration. "Ross, deploy the temporal displacement rounds." "Aye, sir. Firing." The weapons that struck the next Corvani cruiser didn't destroy it in any conventional sense. Instead, the ship simply began aging rapidly. Decades passed in seconds as hull metal corroded, systems failed, and the crew inside withered to dust. Within minutes, nothing remained but an ancient wreck that looked like it had been drifting in space for centuries. Across the Corvani fleet, panic set in. Their enemy seemed capable of attacking from impossible angles with weapons that defied every known law of physics. Ships that had been there one moment simply ceased to exist the next. Others found their own weapons turning against them as reality-warping fields converted their plasma bolts into exotic matter that ate through their own hulls. Colonel Nash, now in command after Voss's death, tried to rally his forces. "All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance. Deploy quantum scanners, full spectrum analysis." But the quantum scanners showed nothing. The human ships existed in dimensions the Corvani couldn't perceive, striking from angles that shouldn't exist. When they did appear on sensors, it was only for the brief moment needed to deploy another impossible weapon. The human destroyer Wraith demonstrated gravity manipulation by creating a localized black hole that consumed 3 Corvani vessels before dissipating harmlessly. The cruiser Ghost used phase technology to materialize inside enemy ships, deploy antimatter charges, then vanish before the explosions could touch them. But the most terrifying moment came when the human flagship Silence finally revealed itself. The vessel looked almost primitive compared to Corvani designs, a simple wedge of dark metal with no visible weapons ports. When it fired, the attacking aliens realized they had been fighting humanity's minor support vessels. The main gun of the Silence didn't shoot projectiles or energy beams. Instead, it fired concentrated packets of rewritten physics. Where the weapon struck, the fundamental forces that held matter together simply stopped working. Corvani ships didn't explode. They simply fell apart at the atomic level, their particles drifting away like dust in a cosmic wind. Within 2 hours, the entire Corvani invasion fleet had been eliminated. not destroyed in battle, but systematically, dissected by weapons that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolutes. The few surviving escape pods were allowed to flee, carrying with them tales that would shake the galaxy to its core. Colonel Nash, barely alive in a damaged pod, transmitted his emergency report to Corvani High Command. His words would later be dismissed as battle-induced hallucination by military analysts, but recorded by historians as the first accurate assessment of humanity's true capabilities. "They're not primitive," he gasped into the recorder. "We were wrong about everything. Their technology doesn't just surpass ours, it makes ours look like stone tools. They can phase between dimensions, manipulate time itself, create and destroy matter at will. We've awakened something that was pretending to be weak." On Earth, Admiral Stone reviewed the battle footage with grim satisfaction. The demonstration had been precisely calibrated. Overwhelming enough to make the galaxy take notice, but limited enough to suggest this was merely humanity's conventional military capability. "Phase 1 complete," he reported to President Cross. "The galaxy now knows we're not helpless. They don't yet know how not helpless we really are." Cross nodded grimly. Intelligence suggested the major galactic powers were already mobilizing. In response to the Corvani defeat, humanity had maybe months before facing a much larger threat. "Initiate Phase 2 preparations," Cross ordered, "and may whatever gods are watching forgive us for what we're about to unleash." The Corvani Empire, once a major galactic power, withdrew all forces to their home system and began desperately researching new defensive technologies. But deep in their classified files, a single report would later prove prophetic. An intelligence analyst named Crix had written, "If this is what humans can do when defending themselves, what happens when they go on the offensive?" The galaxy would soon find out. Emergency sessions had been called across 50 different homeworlds as news of the Corvani disaster spread through galactic communication networks. What had seemed impossible was now undeniable. The primitive humans had weapons that could phase through shields, manipulate time, and rewrite fundamental physics. The galaxy's established order was crumbling. Empress Nala of the Centauri Dominion stood before the largest military assembly in recorded history. Her crystalline form reflected the light of 1,000 holographic displays showing fleet positions across the galaxy. Every major power had contributed ships to what they called the United Galactic Front, over 10,000 vessels representing the combined might of 50 civilizations. The human threat must be contained before it spreads beyond their system, Nala declared, her voice resonating through quantum communicators to fleet commanders scattered across light years. "We have seen what their defensive capabilities can accomplish. We cannot allow them to develop offensive technologies." Warlord Pike of the Andromedan Horde nodded his massive armored head in agreement. His species had conquered 3 galaxies through superior firepower and ruthless tactics. "My analysis of the Corvani battle footage suggests the humans were holding back. They eliminated 200 warships without suffering a single casualty. That level of restraint indicates either supreme confidence or hidden capabilities we haven't seen yet." The assembled fleet was a sight that should have filled any observer with awe. Dreadnoughts the size of small moons hung alongside reality-bending constructs that existed partially in other dimensions. Weapons that could crack planets charged alongside defensive systems that had never failed in 10,000 years of warfare. But on Earth, Dr. Lane stood in a laboratory buried 5 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean, reviewing readings that would have terrified the approaching armada. The quantum disturbance patterns created by 10,000 alien ships moving in formation had triggered automated systems that hadn't been activated since humanity's first contact with advanced physics. "They're coming in full force," she reported, to the emergency council session. "Every major galactic power, plus dozens of minor ones. This isn't just an invasion, it's an extermination attempt." President Cross studied the tactical displays with growing concern. The approaching fleet outmassed. Humanity's revealed military capability by a factor of several thousand. Even with their advanced technology, the ships they had shown the galaxy couldn't possibly survive such overwhelming force. "Recommendations?" Cross asked quietly. Dr. Lane took a deep breath. "We activate Protocol Genesis, full deployment of Type 7, reality manipulation weapons. But, sir, once we cross that line, there's no hiding what we really are anymore." The silence in the room was deafening. Protocol Genesis represented humanity's deepest secret, weapons developed from studying the fundamental structure of the universe itself, not just advanced physics, but the ability to rewrite the basic rules that governed reality within localized space. "They've forced our hand," Cross finally said. "Authorized. Deploy everything." The battle began at the edge of the solar system, where advanced scouts from the Galactic Fleet encountered humanity's outer defense perimeter. What they found defied every tactical manual ever written. Admiral Blake commanded the human response from the bridge of the dreadnought, Inevitable, a vessel that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. When the first wave of alien attackers approached, they found themselves fighting enemies that could attack from angles that didn't exist in normal space-time. "Deploy quantum entanglement weapons," Blake ordered calmly. "Target their command structure." The aliens watched in horror as their own ships began turning on each other. Not through any external control or computer virus, but because the quantum states of their weapon systems had been entangled with their enemies. When they fired at human targets, their weapons simultaneously fired at their own allies with identical force. Pike's flagship, the massive battlecruiser Domination, found itself under attack by its own escort vessels. The warlord's roar of fury echoed across communication channels as he tried to understand how human technology could corrupt the basic cause and effect relationships that governed reality. "All ships, fall back to secondary formation," Pike commanded. "Deploy exotic matter countermeasures." But the exotic matter weapons his engineers had developed proved useless against human defenses. The destroyer Trinity demonstrated humanity's mastery over fundamental forces by creating localized fields where different physics applied. Inside these zones, energy weapons became solid objects that fell harmlessly to the ground, while kinetic projectiles transformed into bursts of healing light. The real terror began when Colonel White's ground forces engaged alien boarding parties. The galaxy had expected human soldiers to be fragile creatures, protected by primitive armor and chemical weapons. Instead, they encountered beings in combat suits that granted near invulnerability and control over gravity itself. White himself moved through the corridors of a captured alien dreadnought like a force of nature. His suit allowed him to walk on walls and ceilings as easily as floors, while his weapons fired concentrated packets of restructured matter that could phase through any armor before reassembling as explosives inside their targets. "This is impossible," gasped Captain Torres of the Vegan Republic as he watched his elite shock troops being systematically dismantled by a single human soldier. "No species should be able to manipulate fundamental forces at the individual level." The battle raged for 18 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human ships moved through the alien fleet like predators among prey, their weapons rewriting the laws of physics to turn enemy strengths into weaknesses. Vessels that had been immune to energy weapons found themselves vulnerable to attacks that existed outside the normal spectrum of forces. The breaking point came when Empress Nala's flagship, the crystalline behemoth Eternal Light, faced the human battleship Genesis. The two vessels were roughly equal in size, but when they engaged, the difference in capability became immediately apparent. The Genesis didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, it projected fields of altered reality around enemy vessels. Inside these fields, time moved differently, gravity flowed upward, and atomic bonds became suggestions rather than laws. The Eternal Light found itself aging centuries in seconds while its own weapons turned into harmless light shows. "All ships, immediate retreat," Nala commanded, her voice breaking with something that might have been fear. "Full dispersal pattern. Abandon the attack." But even retreat proved difficult. Human ships pursued the fleeing aliens with technology that made conventional faster-than-light travel look pedestrian. They appeared to move through higher dimensions, arriving at their destinations before they had finished leaving their starting points. The final casualty count was devastating. 4. The Galactic Alliance. Over 4,000 ships destroyed or permanently disabled, with human losses numbering exactly 0. Not because they had superior numbers or better tactics, but because their technology operated on principles that made conventional warfare obsolete. In the aftermath, as scattered alien fleets limped back to their home systems, emergency communications filled galactic networks with reports that read like fantasy rather than military intelligence. "They don't just have advanced weapons," reported General Hall of the Sirius Confederation. "They can manipulate the basic structure of reality itself. Matter, energy, time, space, all of it seems malleable in their hands." Dr. Mora, the xenobiologist, who had originally classified humanity as harmless, filed an updated report that would become one of the most classified documents in galactic history. "Previous assessment completely incorrect," she wrote with trembling appendages. "Humanity does not represent an advanced civilization. They represent a fundamental evolution beyond our understanding of what sentient life can achieve. Recommend immediate diplomatic contact and complete submission to their terms." But even she didn't understand the true scope of her miscalculation. The humans the galaxy had been fighting weren't conquerors, or even soldiers in any conventional sense. They were researchers, studying galactic civilization the same way a scientist might observe bacteria in a petri dish. The real human military had yet to be deployed, and if the galaxy continued on its current path, they might not remain observers much longer. On Earth, President Cross received casualty reports with grim satisfaction. 0 human losses, overwhelming victory, and the galaxy's major powers scattered and demoralized. But intelligence suggested an even greater threat was awakening in the galactic core. "The elder race is stirring," Dr. Lane reported. "Our reality manipulation weapons have caught their attention. They're beginning to emerge from dormancy." Cross nodded slowly. The elders, beings of pure energy who had once ruled the galaxy before, retreating into mysterious slumber. If they were awakening, humanity's true test was yet to come. Panic rippled across the galaxy faster than the fastest ships could travel. Emergency evacuations began on worlds within 100 light-years of human space as entire civilizations abandoned their homelands rather than risk humanity's attention. The Vegan colonies packed their populations into generation ships. The Sirius Confederation dismantled their orbital habitats and fled toward the galactic rim. Ambassador Reed stood in what had once been the bustling capital of the Altarian trade network, now a ghost city of empty towers and silent docks. The reptilian population had evacuated so quickly they had left meals half-finished on tables and children's toys scattered in empty parks. Even their government buildings stood vacant, important documents abandoned in their haste to escape. 30 billion beings, Reed reported via quantum communicator to Earth Command. Gone in less than a week. They didn't even try to negotiate or establish diplomatic contact. The fear was understandable. Reports from the battle with the United Galactic Front had spread and grown with each telling. Humans who could walk through walls, weapons that made atomic bonds optional, ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Reality itself seemed to bend around human technology in ways that challenged every species' fundamental understanding of the universe. But while the known galaxy fled in terror, something far more dangerous was awakening in the galactic core. The Elder Facility had slept for over 1 million years, hidden within a pocket dimension that intersected with normal space only at specific cosmic alignments. The beings that had built it were older than most stars, creatures that had evolved beyond physical matter into pure consciousness, capable of manipulating reality through will alone. Elder Prime stirred first, its awareness expanding outward like ripples in a cosmic pond. What it sensed should have been impossible, a young species wielding forces that the elders themselves had taken eons to master. Worse, these creatures seemed to be improving and adapting the fundamental principles, at a rate that suggested intuitive understanding rather than learned knowledge. Alert Status 7. Prime communicated to its sleeping brethren through methods that transcended normal physics. Universal threat detected. Initiate awakening protocols. Across the galactic core, ancient constructs began powering up for the first time since the last great universal war. Reality-shaping engines that could rewrite the laws of physics across entire solar systems hummed to life. Weapons that existed as pure concept rather than matter prepared for deployment. The Elder race had once ruled not just the galaxy, but entire clusters of galaxies. They had withdrawn from active governance only when their power had grown so vast that their mere presence warped space-time around inhabited worlds. Now, for the first time in 1,000,000 years, they prepared for war. Meanwhile, on Earth, Commander Vale led a black operations team through the tunnels beneath what the world knew as Area 51. The facility extended far deeper than any public record. Suggested its lower levels carved from bedrock that had been transformed into materials that shouldn't exist in normal physics. Target secured, Vale reported as his team reached the central chamber. Before them lay the source of humanity's rapid technological advancement, a crashed Elder probe that had impacted Earth in 1963. What the Soviets had reported as a meteor, strike had actually been humanity's first contact with technology that operated beyond conventional understanding. The probe itself defied easy description. It existed partially in normal space, partially in dimensions that human mathematics could barely theorize. But somehow, human scientists had not only studied it but had begun understanding and improving upon its principles within decades. Dr. Kim, the facility's chief researcher, ran her hands over surfaces that felt solid but looked transparent. "It's been teaching us," she explained to Vale's team. "Not actively. The probe appears to be dormant, possibly damaged, but human minds seem uniquely capable of reverse engineering Elder technology through intuitive leaps." Vale studied the readings from instruments that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. "How unique. We've tested samples of Elder technology on captured aliens from the recent battles," Kim continued. "Every species we've examined shows the same response, complete inability to understand or replicate Elder principles. But humans," she gestured to a wall covered with equations that hurt to look at directly. "We've not only understood their physics, we've improved on them." The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't developed their reality-manipulating technology through conventional research. They had been unconsciously reverse engineering the most advanced science in the galaxy by studying a single damaged probe, and they had been doing it better than the original creators. This revelation reached Earth's leadership just as Elder ships began appearing at the edges of human space. The vessels themselves challenged conventional understanding of what constituted a ship. They existed as geometric impossibilities, shapes that folded through dimensions in ways that made observers' minds recoil from direct perception. President Cross received the ultimatum in the White House Situation Room, delivered through methods that bypassed every security system on Earth without triggering a single alarm. The message simply appeared in his mind, conveyed through conceptual patterns rather than words. The content was clear despite its alien nature. Humanity would accept immediate exile to a prepared pocket dimension, cut off from the main universe, but allowed to continue existing. The alternative was complete elimination, not just death, but removal from reality itself, as if humans had never existed at all. "How long do we have to respond?" Cross asked aloud, knowing the elders could perceive his thoughts. The answer came as a sensation of cosmic time. Approximately 72 hours before elder patience expired, and they proceeded with humanity's erasure. Admiral Stone reviewed the tactical situation with growing concern. The elder fleet numbered only 12 vessels, but each one existed as a localized reality storm capable of rewriting physics across light years of space. Conventional weapons, even humanity's advanced reality manipulation technology, might prove useless against beings who had been manipulating fundamental forces since before Earth's sun formed. Recommendations? Cross asked his assembled advisors. Fight, said Stone without hesitation. If we submit to exile, we'll never know what we might have been capable of. And based on Dr. Kim's research, we might be the only species in the galaxy with the potential to match elder technology. Dr. Lane agreed, but with reservations. The risk is total extinction, not just for us, but potentially for all life in the galaxy. The elders have weapons that could sterilize entire galactic arms if they choose to use them. Cross weighed the options in silence. Accept exile and preserve humanity in a cosmic cage, or fight beings who considered themselves gods and risk everything for the chance at freedom. The decision came down to humanity's fundamental nature, the same curiosity, and refusal to accept limits that had driven them from caves to stars. They had spent their entire existence pushing against boundaries that others considered absolute. Send our response, Cross finally decided. We refuse exile. If the elders want to eliminate us, they'll have to prove they can. The message went out through quantum channels, reaching the elder fleet in milliseconds. The response was immediate and terrible. Reality itself began to warp around Earth as weapons that existed as pure concept prepared to fire. But in facilities hidden across the globe, humanity's greatest secret began to activate. The technology they had developed wasn't just based on the elder probe, they had been unconsciously improving on it for decades. And what they had created might just be capable of challenging beings who thought themselves beyond mortal reach. The galaxy held its breath as two forces that shouldn't exist prepared for a war that would determine not just humanity's fate, but the fundamental nature of reality itself. The elder weapons fired first, reality-warping energies that should have deleted Earth from existence before humanity could even perceive the attack. Instead, the planet remained untouched, protected by defensive systems that operated on principles the elders themselves had never mastered. Elder Prime felt something it had not experienced in a million years: confusion. The defensive matrix surrounding Earth wasn't just advanced, it was elegant in ways that suggested understanding beyond even elder knowledge. These humans had taken fundamental cosmic principles and refined them with an intuitive grace that bordered on impossible. President Cross stood before the assembled leaders of the galaxy, his image broadcast across thousands of worlds through quantum communication networks. Behind him, Earth hung peaceful and undamaged despite the elder assault, while human ships moved with casual confidence through fields of warped space-time. "My fellow sentients," Cross began, his voice carrying to beings across light years of space. "The time has come to end the misunderstandings that have plagued our first contact with galactic civilization." On the bridge of his flagship, Elder Prime gathered his consciousness to deliver a killing blow that would erase humanity from all possible timelines. But as he reached for the cosmic forces at his command, he found them occupied. Something was already using them with greater skill than he possessed. "You see," Cross continued, "Earth was never our home world. It has served as our research station for the past century, a place to study and understand the various civilizations that make up this galaxy. The revelation hit the watching aliens like a physical blow. Rex of the Altarian fleet, watching from his homeworld's emergency bunker, felt his legs give out as the implications became clear. If Earth was just a research station, then where was the real human civilization? Cross smiled with the patience of a teacher addressing particularly slow students. The humans you've been fighting represent approximately 0.001% of our total population. They volunteered for what we call the Contact Division. Specialists trained to interact with developing civilizations while maintaining appropriate technology levels. Across the galaxy, emergency sessions erupted as military leaders tried to process what they were hearing. 10,000 ships destroyed by less than 1% of humanity's actual force. The mathematics alone made rational thought difficult, but Elder Prime was beginning to suspect an even more disturbing truth. The defensive systems protecting Earth showed signs of engineering principles that predated the Elder race itself. These humans weren't just advanced. They might represent something that had evolved beyond what the Elders had thought possible. Commander Ford appeared next to Cross, as if materializing from empty air, though those with advanced sensors could detect he had actually stepped through folded space-time from a location several galaxies away. His casual arrival demonstrated technology that made Elder transportation methods seem clumsy. The real human fleet has been waiting in parallel dimensions for this conversation, Ford announced pleasantly. We thought it might be helpful to provide some context for our capabilities. The space around Earth suddenly filled with ships that hadn't been there moments before. But these weren't the relatively small vessels the galaxy had been fighting. These were constructs the size of solar systems, their surfaces crawling with weapons that existed as mathematical concepts made manifest. Elder Prime attempted to scan the newcomers and found his perception simply sliding away from them. The ships existed in more dimensions than even Elder senses could perceive, operating on principles that made his million years of accumulated knowledge seem like primitive scratching in cosmic dust. We've been traveling between galaxies for longer than most of your species have possessed language, Cross explained to his stunned audience. Our technology allows us to create and destroy universes as easily as you might light a fire. We can manipulate time, rewrite the fundamental constants of physics, and exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The demonstration that followed was gentle by human standards, but terrifying for its implications. A single human ship created a new star system in empty space, complete with planets that harbored complex ecosystems. Another vessel demonstrated control over time itself by aging the new system through millions of years of evolution in seconds, creating intelligent life that developed, flourished, and chose to transcend physical existence in moments. But here's what you need to understand, Cross continued, his tone becoming more serious. We developed these capabilities not through conquest or domination, but through curiosity and cooperation. We explored the universe because we wanted to understand it, not rule it. Ambassador Quinn stepped forward, her presence somehow calming. Despite representing a species that could reshape reality at will, she had spent decades studying galactic civilizations, learning their languages, customs, and deepest fears. Now she spoke with the authority of someone who truly understood what she was addressing. Your species have made the same mistake that has plagued intelligent life since consciousness first emerged, Quinn said gently. You assumed that power must be used for control, that advanced capability meant aggressive intent. You saw our restraint and mistook it for weakness. Elder Prime, ancient beyond measure and powerful beyond most species' comprehension, found himself reconsidering everything he thought he knew about the universe. These humans spoke of restraint as if it were strength, of cooperation as if it were power. The concepts challenged his fundamental understanding of how advanced civilizations operated. The truth is, Quinn continued, we could have revealed ourselves at any time. We could have imposed our will on the galaxy, reshaped it according to our preferences, eliminated threats before they emerged. But we chose not to. She gestured toward the assembled alien fleets, many still fleeing toward the galactic rim in terror. We wanted to see what your civilizations might achieve on their own, what innovations you might develop, what cultures you might create, what wisdom you might discover that we had overlooked. The irony was devastating in its simplicity. The galaxy's most advanced species had been studying its lesser civilizations not as a prelude to conquest, but out of genuine scientific curiosity. They had hidden their capabilities not from fear, but from respect for the natural development of younger species. Rex, monitoring the transmission from his bunker, felt something that might have been shame. His species had attacked Earth not from strength, but from desperate weakness disguised as aggression. They had seen humans as prey when they were actually the subjects of a benevolent study. Of course, Cross added with a slight smile. Some of you have forced us to accelerate our timeline. The Corvani invasion, the formation of the United Galactic Front, the Elder Awakening, all of this has demonstrated that this galaxy may not be ready for the gentle guidance we had hoped to provide. Elder Prime felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. The human president's words carried implications that reached beyond mere military threat. These beings could apparently guide entire galactic civilizations toward advancement, nurturing development across eons with patience. That made Elder timescales seem brief. Commander Ford activated a display that showed the true scope of human presence in the universe. Millions of galaxies bore the subtle marks of human influence. Civilizations guided toward prosperity, extinct species restored, dying stars renewed. Everywhere they had touched, life had flourished beyond what natural evolution alone could have achieved. We've spent the last several million years working to create optimal conditions for intelligent life throughout the universe, Ford explained, casually. Preventing cosmic catastrophes, seeding promising worlds with the building blocks of life, sometimes providing subtle guidance when species faced extinction events. The casual mention of timescales that dwarfed galactic history left most listeners struggling to comprehend the scope of what they were hearing. Humanity hadn't just achieved advanced technology. They had been gardening the universe since before most current species had evolved. Dr. Lane materialized beside Quinn, stepping through dimensional barriers as easily as walking through a door. We've been particularly interested in this galaxy because it's produced an unusually diverse range of intelligent species. The potential for cultural and scientific advancement here is remarkable. Her words carried no condescension, only genuine enthusiasm for the achievements of supposedly primitive civilizations. It was perhaps the most humbling thing the galaxy's leaders had ever heard, beings of godlike power expressing admiration for their crude accomplishments. But recent events have shown us that this galaxy may need more direct guidance than we had hoped, Cross said, his tone carrying gentle regret. The tendency toward aggression, the assumption that advanced capability equals hostile intent, the immediate resort to warfare when faced with the unknown, these patterns suggest civilizations that haven't yet learned to manage their own power responsibly. Elder Prime understood the implicit threat. Humanity could reshape galactic civilization at will, but they were offering something that might be even more valuable, the chance for existing species to grow and develop under benevolent guidance rather than be replaced entirely. So we're offering a choice, Quinn announced, her voice reaching every world in the galaxy simultaneously. Accept our guidance toward a new golden age of cooperation and advancement, or continue down the current path of fear-driven aggression and face the consequences of forcing us to take a more active role in galactic governance. The terms were clear despite their diplomatic phrasing. Submit to humanity's benevolent leadership, or be managed as a threat to universal stability. It wasn't conquest in any traditional sense. It was an offer of mentorship backed by the implicit understanding that refusal meant being treated as a danger to cosmic order. President Cross looked directly into the camera, his expression carrying the weight of absolute authority tempered by genuine compassion. We don't want to rule you. We want to help you grow beyond the limitations that have led to this conflict. But we will not allow continued aggression to threaten the stability we've worked to create across the universe. The galaxy's response came in waves of capitulation. Within hours, every major government had formally requested humanity's guidance in restructuring their civilizations along more peaceful lines. Even Elder Prime, ancient and proud beyond measure, acknowledged humanity's right to guide galactic development. But perhaps the most telling response came from Dr. Mora, the xenobiologist who had originally classified humanity as harmless. Her final report, transmitted to every scientific institution in the galaxy, contained a single sentence that would be remembered for millennia. In our arrogance, we mistook humanity's greatest strength, their capacity for restraint and genuine benevolence, as evidence of weakness, and in doing so we revealed not their limitations, but our own. The galaxy had learned, far too late, that the most dangerous species in the universe was one that possessed unlimited power, but chose to use it with wisdom, compassion, and remarkable restraint. They had awakened something that could have destroyed them all, but had instead chosen to guide them toward something better than they had ever imagined possible. And in facilities hidden across countless worlds, human observers smiled quietly and began the long work of nurturing a galaxy toward its true potential.